come and be worshipped, come and be caressed. My Dark Vanessa. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell is one hell of a book, let me tell you. It's insane. Just the way it creeps you out but makes you think about your life and your choices and your experience and what you would do in so many different situations, and it makes you stop and have empathy for people and just reevaluate your entire life. At least it made me reevaluate a lot of my life and make me think about a lot of it. And I will be honest, when it first rang up at $27.99 in Barnes & Noble, I almost didn't buy it just because it was so expensive and, did I really want to spend $30 on a book? And I didn't realize at that moment I was on one of those precipices that we have and can never realize that we're at until we look back on them. Hindsight's 20/20. But I don't even know how to describe it in a non-spoiled version. I don't think I'm capable of talking about it and really not giving everything away. All I will say for all of my non-spoil people is it follows Vanessa from the time she's 15 to the time she is 32, I want to say. And her 15-year-old self starts a relationship with her 42-year-old teacher. So, yeah, that's really all I can put forth about the book. I think just everybody should read it. That's how powerful and moving it is, and I feel like it's one of those books where if the whole world reads it, we'd suddenly have a better understanding of everything and just victimhood and sexual abuse and sexual assault and the way that takes a toll on people and how different people view it in different ways and just everything about that situation and how to recover from it and stuff. Yeah, I really think everybody should read this book. It's that moving and crazy, and I love it. Books, TV, music, and movies. All things that make a big impact on everyone. I'm constantly gushing about my latest read to anyone who will listen, so I figured I'd turn my rambling into something coherent that people might actually listen to. That means no tuning out halfway through. I'm Maya Ghosh, and this is my take. So I want to start off this spoiled section by telling all of the adults in my life you need not listen to this episode of my podcast, just because the book deals with very heavy adult topics and I'm probably going to curse a lot, and I'm sure y'all don't want to hear that, so I'm really okay if you don't listen. It'd be doing me a favor. But yeah, now with that out of the way, starting off again with the writing, I don't know why, I just feel like I have to touch on the writing on every book just a little bit, just to, make it feel like I'm doing something a little academic at least in my just rambling on about books. So yeah, the writing was amazing. I mean, the whole book was amazing in addition to being creepy and thought-provoking and everything that I said in the intro, but yeah, the writing is amazing. There are a lot of symbols, specifically there was the red balloon tied to the tree, and there are a lot of animal symbols, and I never really stopped to dissect the symbols very much, but especially with symbols like the red balloon, it was tethered to the tree, and so all of the symbols being kind of tethered to something, or at least that symbol being tethered to something, could represent Vanessa's tether to Strain and how that dynamic plays out in the rest of the novel, and how, especially because she notices the red balloon when she's very young, it happens when she's still at the boarding school and stuff, so she's at that point fully and completely tied to him, so that could be what the red balloon symbol is about. There's also, which this is not entirely the writing, but a complete and utter contrast between the typical like teen drama of her broken friendship with Jenny and all of the, underage drinking and all of the stuff that happens, like that complete and utter contrast with, the sexual abuse and emotional manipulation is kind of jarring at first. Like, it really puts into perspective. She's 15, and as much as 15-year-olds think they're grown up and ready to take on the world and know everything, they're not. I say that as somebody who's 17, so not very far out from being 15. But I definitely know my 15-year-old self was not ready to take on the world and is not an adult. I'm still not an adult. So yeah, just that contrast between her dealing with such trivial, like typical high school things that everybody associates with teenagers to her dealing with, really heavy shit. It's kind of insane. So yeah, that is my take on kind of the writing and the literary devices and all that jazz. Now, moving on to the plot. I will say I did not know from the blurb, and this is probably my fault because the blurb does make it kind of clear. I didn't know she was in contact with Strain, and I didn't know that she was like okay with what happened. I say okay with air quotes, even though y'all can't see, but like, she never says she sees herself as a victim. That's a whole point of the book, is it takes, most of the book for her to admit, look, I'm a victim of something. So I didn't realize that from the blurb, which made the whole first like chapter extremely jarring, because when she calls him to have him like recreate a scene of them in his office and she uses that to like get off, I was in shock, to say the least. I was also extremely grossed out and creeped out, and I didn't know what to say. But yeah, that was a lot. So I was not prepared for her as an adult going into the book. Like, I was not prepared for how she handled the whole situation as an adult going into it. Obviously the plot was a lot, and the really two big things I wanted to hit on was the beginning and me not being prepared, which I guess is mostly my fault, but still, I think even if you knew, like, she was okay with what happened, or if she, like, was still in contact with him, like, the beginning is very jarring, just the way she, like, she's so broken, but she doesn't see it, and that's very sad, and it's very sad that she still needs him in that way to, satisfy her needs. Like, it's just kind of a lot in the beginning. So yeah, I wanted to touch on that, and then I wanted to jump straight to the end, because if you had told me in the beginning how it ended, I would have been very mad. I would have been like, how did she, not figure everything out, and why did she not, agree to help Taylor with the article and come forward and all that? I would have been like pissed. I would have been like, what the hell? Like, why did this book not end better? But in having gone through the whole experience of reading it and seeing Vanessa's story and seeing how traumatizing it was for her, even if she wasn't letting herself believe it's traumatizing, this is like the only way the book can plausibly end. There is plenty of progress made with Ruby, her therapist, and in talking it out and realizing that yes, she is a victim, and yes, something did happen to her, and yes, she does have things she needs to work on, and she doesn't understand how to be herself without her tethered to him, because it was more than half her life, and for the first 5 years of your life you don't really have an identity, and you don't know how to memories you form as a child don't really stick with you. So she really only had 10 years of trying to figure out who you are. And anybody who's been a teenager knows that you don't know who you are until you you change your mind and your attitudes and your opinions so quickly that, like, she never had any time to be a human. So the fact that she had been with him for so long, like, it makes sense that she doesn't understand. And so the fact that she finally at the end is able to admit, like, you know, and admit and accept the fact that stuff happened to her and she was a victim and she needs to work on being herself. I mean, it's like the only acceptable ending, I think. Like, you can't expect for her to have gone through all of this and been in such denial for so long and then just suddenly be fine. Like, that's not how life works, right? So, I mean, yeah, that's kind of really why I love the ending, because it's not the ending you want at the beginning, but it's the ending you need at the ending, if that makes any sense. I also love that the ending included Jolene, her pup, because dogs just make everything better. So the fact that her recovery was aided by a dog and that she got a dog and it kind of is a new beginning of her creating memories tethered to being a dog mom as opposed to tethered to strain is this really great thing. And I love that Jolene was part of the ending too. That was really great and made the ending a little less, like, not terrible because it was a great ending, but made it hurt a little less with the fact that we didn't get to see her full recovery, right? We just see her start the journey to recovery. But the fact that she is a dog, I mean, that just makes it all better. Dogs just make everything better, honestly. So yeah, moving on from the plot and what happened, the big question that stuck out in my mind was, like, how would I have handled this situation? And I mean this from all aspects of it, right? How would I have handled being in Vanessa's position? How would I have handled, you know, as her friends? What do I think I would have done? And also, like, and thinking about that question, it also makes me realize how lucky I was because, I mean, 15 is a formative age, right? Like, you think you're a lot more secure in yourself than you are, and, you know, sophomore year is difficult. It's arguably a harder transition than freshman year because freshman year is like everybody's new and everybody's getting used to this thing, and then sophomore year it's like you're taking harder classes and you're learning how to, you know, not be the new kid, right? So there's no, like, excuse for not understanding stuff about your school or whatever, right? You've spent a year there, you should know. So there's more pressure put on it, and I mean, sophomore year was hard. Like, it was a fun year, yes, but it was still a hard year, and I mean, instinctively would have known, right? Like if I had been Vanessa and Shane had been coming on to me, I instinctively would have known, like, that's not okay, right? But would I have had the courage to step away and say anything and be like Taylor when she reported him and stuff? Like, I don't know if I would have been able to do that because it's a scary situation that no 15-year-old should have to be in, you know? You shouldn't have to be dealing with that, and you shouldn't have to know how to handle that situation. So, I mean, obviously, I've never been in that situation. I can't say for a fact that I know I would do this, this, and this, and that make the book scarier to me is thinking about, like, what the fuck would I have done? Like, really, I mean, I don't know. And again, that brings me back to how lucky I am that I never had to experience that, and up until now, I, you know, have never had to experience being a victim of sexual assault or sexual abuse or rape or anything like that. I mean, the statistics at colleges are not great, but hopefully I will get to continue saying I've never been a victim and I won't ever have to know how I'll deal with being a victim. But yeah, it made me thankful, which then makes me annoyed because I shouldn't have to be living in a world where I'm thankful that I'm not a victim. I should get to live in a world where it's not expected that I'll be a victim and the numbers aren't that high, you know? So this is where, you know, I'm probably losing people, but it's like, that's my train of thought in this book is like, what the hell? Like, I start thinking about how would I handle it, and then I realize how lucky I am, but then I'm like, no, you can't be lucky. Like, you shouldn't have to be lucky and thankful. You should get to be whatever the hell you want to be. I mean, it's not fair that we live in this society, and this is regardless of Vanessa's feelings towards Strain and how she thought she was being okay, because, I mean, it's very obvious that she's not. Like, girl doesn't get it. I mean, she doesn't, like, she's creeped out by him and she disassociates with her body. Like, I will never be able to read a romance novel or any novel where it's like, he kissed me so passionately that, like, I floated away and we weren't, like, I'll never be able to see that sentence again, or see that sentence the same way again, because of this book and how every single time they had sex, she just, like, couldn't be there. Like, is that not a sign? Did that not set off warning bells in her head? Anyways, regardless of, like, her opinions, right, it is abuse. Every person from the outside looking in realizes it is abuse. So, I mean, what the hell? And would I have been a Jessie or would I have been a Jenny? Like, that was my other question to myself, was, would I have addressed the situation and confronted my friend and been like, hey, you know, what's going on? Is there something going on? I can get my parents involved. Or would I have just quietly walked away and let her live her life? Like, I don't know. I think at 15, I might have been a Jessie. I might have just walked away and been like, not my life, not my problem. Like, I don't even know this girl very well. And just left it. And I think that's a very teenage thing too, is we're all struggling with our own shit and we don't want to get involved in other people's problems, and we fear social isolation and ostracism so much that we don't get involved, because the core question in the back of our head is, what if I lose a friend over this, right? Like, when in the long term, and even now sitting here at 17, yeah, it's obviously worth it if you lose somebody's friendship to protect them, or at least stop something from getting worse than it already was. But that takes time to develop. And even now, I sit here saying this at 17, I don't know, never been in that situation. So for me to say that, I say that hoping that that's what I would do, and hoping that I would be strong enough and smart enough and present enough to make that decision, as opposed to reverting to being a Jessie. But also, in that sense, reading this book has made a big impact on how I see myself acting in that situation, because, again, never having dealt with it, this book is a very good way to see all sides, because every time you're in a situation, right, you only see a couple sides of it if you see more sides than your own. So to step back and to get this book and be able to see, I mean, obviously it's written following Vanessa, right, but we see where Jenny's coming from, we see where Jessie's coming from, we see Vanessa's victimhood and how she struggles to deal with it, and we see Taylor's victimhood that fits the more typical description of a victim of this. So it's a mess. This book really is, like, boggling my mind. I have no clue if what I'm saying is coherent and makes any kind of sense, but it literally is just, like, how crazy this book is and how deeply it makes me feel. And maybe it wouldn't make me feel this deeply if I'm not, you know, I mean, okay, not this deeply, but this, like, boggling my mind kind of thing if I wasn't 17. So I was sitting here at 25 reading this, maybe I'd have a totally different take. And maybe that's something I should do. Maybe periodically in my life I should reread this book and see how it changes my opinions, but I don't know. I write notes about what I want to say and stuff, and one of my notes literally just is, like, what the fuck would I do? And I think that is the main point of this whole rambling, past, you know, talking about the ending of the book and all the questions I posed to myself. And, like, I don't know. I hope I know. I hope what I know is objectively the right thing to do is what I would do. And I hope that, again, I never go into this situation, never have to deal with this situation. And I hope that if, God forbid, I'm in this situation, the institutions handle it better than Broadwick does. I mean, Broadwick did a really shitty thing. Especially with, like, the point that Ruby made in her final therapy session about how Strain was the one to pull her out of class and bring Vanessa to the principal's office for their first meeting. Like, as soon as that happened and Strain pulled her out of class, red flags went off in my head. I was like, he should not be the teacher to take her. Like, as an administrator, why would you want the accused abuser there? Like, regardless of what steps you are taking and whether you believe her or not, and whether you believe him and his emails that we find out he later sent to her, like, why do you not just want an unbiased opinion? For goodness sakes, I mean, come on. Like, Broadway had to do better, and I hope that institutions do better, and I hope that if something like this happened in my school, it would do better. My administration would do better. I don't know. I hope that they would do better, and I hope that for all of the effort they go through to make us sit through presentation after presentation, year after year, on what constitutes sexual abuse, what constitutes sexual assault, what constitutes rape, what, statutory rape is, and all of the stuff that we learn, and, how ingrained it is in my head that A, if somebody doesn't want tea, don't force them to drink tea, and B, sending a naked picture when you're under 18 is child pornography. Don't do it. It ruins lives. Like, those two things are big points our school has made to us, and things that I have learned over the years and have drilled in my head. But for all of their preparation and telling us to do that, how would they react? Like, I don't know. And I guess that's a good thing, because that means that in my time they haven't had to deal with the situation. But it also, just makes me think about schools and the institutions in my life and how they would react to something like that. In conclusion of this episode, I really want to thank Kate Elizabeth Russell for writing this novel. As you guys can probably tell, it baffled me and boggled my mind and was insane. And I don't think I am the same person I was before I read this novel. I think it was that transformative. Everybody should just read this book because of how thought-provoking it is, regardless of age, gender, opinions on things like the Me Too movement. Like, this book makes you think. And if I was an English teacher, it's such a contemporary issue with the Me Too movement and all of that. Like, I would teach it as a book. I think it's that informative, and I think it's that important. And obviously I had a lot of feels about everything in the book, but like I said before, my big takeaway is like, just what the fuck would I do? I have been Maya Ghosh, and this has been my take on My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Thanks for listening.